What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. The arrival of Aaron Rodgers has ruined the Steelers' chances of rebuilding, and I'm happy about it because I'm getting sick and tired of hearing that the Steelers made a mistake trading for DK Metcalf, signing Aaron Rodgers when they should have just ran it with Mason Rudolph for this year, traded away TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, and Minka Fitzpatrick for draft picks so they can position themselves to land a quarterback in next year's draft class. Rebuilding is pussy. You don't have to rebuild or intentionally suck to land a good quarterback in the draft. The Chiefs traded up for Patrick Mahomes. The Buffalo Bills traded into the top 10 to land Josh Allen. Hell, the Ravens traded back into the end of the first round in 2018 to get Lamar Jackson. You don't have to suck to get a quarterback in the first round that's good. You can trade up for one. The Steelers have acquired 12 draft picks. They have more than enough ammo to trade up for one of the top quarterbacks in the 2026 draft without having to suck this season intentionally. Teams that have drafted a quarterback high didn't do so by intentionally trying to tank. They just were that bad. When the Colts sucked for Andrew Luck, they didn't go into that season saying, oh man, we got to tank for Andrew Luck. Peyton Manning's neck got snapped in half. And their backup quarterback was just bad enough to the point where they were in position to get Andrew Luck and move on from Peyton Manning. When the Carolina Panthers got Cam Newton, they didn't tank for Cam. They were just bad enough to be in position to draft him. Nobody in the NFL wins by intentionally trying to lose. Rebuilding in the NFL does not work. Nobody can name me 5 teams that have traded away all of their best players for draft picks, have tanked on purpose, have rebuilt, and won a Super Bowl after. I don't want to hear no close calls like the Detroit Lions. Give me examples of teams that trade away all of their best players and flip those picks into all-pro level players. The last time I can recall a team that did that was the Dallas Cowboys when they traded away Herschel Walker to the Vikings and got a haul in return. That's it. Rebuilding in the NFL does not work. The teams that consistently win in this league, like the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Eagles, they don't rebuild. They don't tank and blow it all up just because it's not working. Yes, the Steelers have gone a very long time without a playoff win, and something has to change. Is Aaron Rodgers the change that the Steelers need to get back in the Super Bowl contention? No, but Steeler fans are not expecting a Super Bowl out of Aaron Rodgers. The Steelers just want to be competitive this year. They have more than enough draft capital to trade into the top 15 or the top 10 to land a quarterback and one of the deepest quarterback classes that we've had since 2024. This is a quarterback class that we have coming up that's going to have around 5, 6 first-round caliber quarterbacks in it. And if the Steelers do end up losing in the wild card round this year of Aaron Rodgers, guess what? They're going to be picking in their early 20s, which puts them in prime position to land one of those top signal callers. And maybe if they do trade up, they don't have to give up as many assets to do so. The 49ers, when they got Trey Lance, even though he was a bust, he didn't work out, they traded up the farm to get the 3rd overall pick from the Miami Dolphins. There have been plenty of examples of teams that have been able to get a franchise quarterback or get the quarterback that they've desired in the first round without intentionally having to tank. You don't disassemble an already playoff team when you're only 1 or 2 pieces away. Aaron Rodgers is just a Band-Aid. Yes, the Steelers have had Band-Aids at quarterback for the last couple of years since Big Ben retired, but Mike Tomlin is just trying to do what any other coach in the NFL in his position would do. Give his team the best chance to win now. Nobody on any team wants to intentionally tank. You think that Cam Hayward wants to be on a losing team on purpose? Do you think that anybody else on any franchise wants to play for a team that is intentionally trying to tank for their replacement? No. You think that fans are going to want to buy tickets to see a team that is intentionally trying to lose? It's not good for business. Tanking doesn't even work in the NBA. The Charlotte Hornets have been tanking for years, still haven't been good. The Jacksonville Jaguars, the New York Jets, the Browns have been rebuilding for the past decade and still haven't won the fucking Super Bowl. The Steelers don't need to rebuild. Rebuilding and tanking does not work in the NFL like how it's made out to. There haven't been too many examples of teams that have successfully pulled it off. And the teams that have done it haven't got anything out of it. When the Dolphins were tanking for Tua, what did that get them? Nowhere. They can't even win a playoff game. Teams that tank do not get a lot out of it because it takes more than just one player to fucking win in the NFL. There are 11 players on the field at once. It takes more than just landing a star quarterback to make yourself a Super Bowl winning team. Did the Eagles blow it all up after they won their first Super Bowl when they wasn't working with Doug Peterson? No. They continued to draft well. They made good free agency signings. They got a new head coach. And eventually they won their second Super Bowl. Mike Tomlin is not going anywhere. I'm not going to waste any of my breath talking about how he needs to get fired because it's not going to happen. And there's no point in us as Steeler fans complaining about Mike Tomlin not getting fired because what can we do about it? We're not the owner. We're not the general manager. I'm getting tired of just wasting time complaining about things that are just simply out of my control, and you should too. Mike Tomlin is going to be the Steelers head coach until he retires or until he wants to get traded. The Rooneys love him. Amar Khan loves him. He's not going anywhere. The Steelers have already quietly rebuilt. They have 7 projected starters on offense this year that they have drafted over the last 4 years. They have 5 projected starters on defense that they have drafted recently. They've already have quietly rebuilt. Mike Tomlin and Amar Khan, they've wanted to rebuild the line of scrimmage, which they've done that on the offensive line with Mason McCormick, Zach Frazier. They've rebuilt the defense. Yes, the defense has underperformed despite being the most expensive defense in the NFL, but that's what happens when you have lackluster quarterback play. The Steelers swung for a quarterback in the weakest quarterback draft ever, and they missed with Kenny Pickett, the best quarterback in that class, somehow happened to be the last pick in that draft, Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy. So if quarterback success in the draft is random, why would it make any sense for the Steelers to give rid of 2 future Hall of Fame players and TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, one of the best safeties in the NFL, for unproven commodities? You don't gamble on potential. You go with what is already proven and you add that with potential. Potential, do you know where that gets you in the NFL? It gets you fired. Look at the situation that the Colts are in with Anthony Richardson right now. Think about what position the 49ers could have been in right now if they didn't luck up and get Brock Purdy, the last pick of the draft. They would have been asked out. It would have set their team back 3 years. Just because you continue to fall short in the playoffs doesn't mean that you need to blow it all up. Nobody is expecting Aaron Rodgers to deliver the Steelers a Super Bowl ring this year. But the hope is that with him leaving the New York Jets, he can end up having a similar arc that we saw Brett Favre leave. Every quarterback that plays for the Jets, for some reason, just has some voodoo magic on them, and they can't play well in that city. They can't play well for that organization, but as soon as they leave, they end up having instant success. Sam Darnold, what did he do when he left the New York Jets? He ended up balling out with the Minnesota Vikings this past season. When Brett Favre left the New York Jets, he had the Minnesota Vikings 1 game shy of making it to the Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers is good enough that the Steelers can at least win a playoff game. And if not, the Steelers are in a position where they don't have to move too far to land a quarterback, whoever is one of the best ones in the 2026 NFL draft. I'm happy that Aaron Rodgers ruined the Steelers' rebuild because rebuilding doesn't fucking work in the NFL, and it's pussy. This isn't Madden, people. This is real life. Lamar might have teased that Jaire Alexander is coming to the Baltimore Ravens. So when the news first broke that Jaire was getting released by the Packers, Lamar instantly reacted to it by posting this meme on his story of this guy having this shocked facial expression. And this could allude that Lamar Jackson is already making some moves behind the scenes. Why I assume this? Because Lamar and Jaire Alexander both played college ball together for the University of Louisville. And they both went in the first round of the 2018 NFL draft, and they still have maintained a really good relationship. And the Ravens are in a position where they can take the risk signing Jaire Alexander. The problem with Jaire is not that he's falling off. When he's on the field, he's arguably the best cornerback in the league. The issue is he's not on the field that often. But the Ravens, though, you don't need Jaire Alexander to be healthy for the entirety of the season, although you would like him to be. You just need him healthy for the postseason. And if you can get him healthy for a playoff run, it does nothing but further add to an already stacked team. Signing Jaire Alexander for the Ravens is a risk worth taking because you're in a position now where you keep coming up short, losing to the Bills, losing to the Chiefs. Too much talent is not enough talent at this point. You need to keep stacking talent on talent. You get Jaire, you have the best secondary maybe in NFL history. You'll have 3 All-Pros, Marlon Humphrey, Jaire, Kyle Hamilton, and then Nate Wiggins had a really good rookie season. Adding Jaire Alexander would boost the Baltimore Ravens Super Bowl chances even further. Jaire could say, you know what? For this long season, let me go help my boy Lamar finally do his big one. It makes a lot of sense for the Ravens to make this move. Even if you do have to overpay a little bit for Jaire, you are trying to go all in on a Super Bowl. You're not thinking about the long-term implications. You're thinking about the now. You're thinking about the present. And you get Jaire Alexander than risk another team in your conference getting him. You don't want to risk the Buffalo Bills or the Kansas City Chiefs potentially signing Jaire. So why not add an already talented player to an already super talented team? Then you give Lamar Jackson even more weapons to help elevate him to finally hoist that Lombardi trophy. Lamar can't do it by himself. The Ravens already had elite defense walking into the playoffs. Yeah, things started off a little bit slow, but they got better as the season progressed under first-time DC Zach Orr. So getting Jaire Alexander is worth the risk if you're the Baltimore Ravens. If you were a team like the Carolina Panthers and the expectation wasn't Super Bowl or bust, then getting Jaire doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you can have opportunity to maximize your Super Bowl window right now, getting a guy like him is an all-in kind of move that the Ravens have to make. You don't worry about the injury risk with him. You're just trying to keep him healthy enough for a postseason run. And if that happens, then it's money well spent. And if he gets injured, hell, it was worth the try. You are at a point where you can afford to take this gamble. Whiffing on Jaire Alexander, if he does suffer another season-ending injury, possibly if you sign him, does not hurt the Ravens that much. And with Lamar currently being in ongoing negotiations for a contract extension, he has enough leverage to say, you know what, I'll take a little bit less for you guys to use that money that I'm leaving on the table so you can sign Jaire Alexander. I think that Lamar is already making that phone call to Jaire to have him playing for the purple and gold this upcoming season. And I think that the Ravens are more than willing to make it happen. Remember, when Lamar was negotiating his last contract extension, his demands were, okay, if I can't get the fully guaranteed money that Deshaun is getting, then at least get DeAndre Hopkins and OBJ. And the Ravens, although they didn't meet that demand, They met him halfway. They said, we can't get both D-Hop and OBJ for you, but we'll try to get one. And who did they get? They got OBJ, and they overpaid for him. And everybody was like, why did they give OBJ $18 million? Because Lamar wanted him. So if Lamar wants Jaire Alexander, the Ravens and him can definitely make it happen. He can play this one season for Baltimore, get his ring, and then get paid elsewhere if somebody's willing to take that gamble. But even if he does get injured this year and the Ravens do overpay him for a one-year prove-it deal, it's money well spent because it's a risk worth taking when you pretty much have fallen short in the playoffs for these last couple of years, despite getting the best quarterback play out of Lamar Jackson of his career. At this point, you just got to keep stacking on talent, and when there's an all-pro level player like Jaire out there, you got to go get him. I hate the Texans signing of Nick Chubb when they already had a stud running back in Woody Marks who would have been more than good enough to be the RB2 behind Joe Mixon. Nick Chubb has fallen off. He's at the prime age of 29 where running backs start to decline, and he's coming off 2 years in 2023 and 2024 that were cut short due to season-ending injuries. He tore his ACL, MCL, and meniscus in 2023. He suffered a broken foot in 2024. And last season, he was a shell of his former self. The Texans are not going to get the Nick Chubb that we grew up watching in his prime years with the Browns. They are getting a running back that is only 20% of what he used to be. Woody Marks shouldn't be buried on the Texans depth chart because of Nick Chubb. When for one, he's more explosive than what Nick Chubb is at this point in his career. Nick Chubb was averaging 3.3 yards per carry last season. That was a career low. That was the worst season of Nick Chubb's career. And it's fair to assume that that just is what Nick Chubb is at this point. When you suffer injuries that devastating late into your career, playing a position that already has a short shelf life, it's hard to bounce back from that and to be anywhere close to the player that you were before those injuries. Woody Marks, not only is he a better pass catching back than Nick Chubb, but he's the best pass catching back that the Texans have. He will be really good in third down situations. He could have been this year's Bucky Irving if the Texans never made this move to sign Nick Chubb. He has good vision, great contact balance. He's also more explosive than what Nick Chubb is. Nick Chubb doesn't have that same get up as what he did coming off those injuries. When you suffer 2 straight seasons of injuries that devastating, you're never going to be the same when it comes to explosion. Woody Marks, on the other hand, he was one of the most explosive backs in college football last year. He was USC's offense last year. He had 1,400 all-purpose yards. He was averaging damn near 6 yards per carry and scored 9 touchdowns. With the kind of explosiveness that Woody Marks has, coupled with his pass-catching ability, he's more talented at this stage early into his career than what Nick Chubb is pretty much entering the last leg of his NFL career. This move by the Browns, it would have looked good on paper if this was 2019 or 2020, but in the year 2025, Nick Chubb just is not the same back now that he once was. You already have Damian Pierce on top of that. What do you need Nick Chubb for? Joe Mixon, we know he's going to be the workhorse back, but Woody Marks would have been the perfect complementary back because he just offers a different skill set. You could have literally had a really deadly 1-2 punch with Woody and Joe Mixon. With Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb, you're not getting what the Lions have and Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. It's not going to be that. You are going to be incredibly disappointed as a Houston Texans fan if you think you can get 70% of what Nick Chubb used to be in his prime. That is unrealistic. This is a guy coming off 2 season-ending injuries back to back to back, and he didn't look nowhere the same player as what he was when he returned last year. Why do you think the Browns were willing to let him go? and not re-sign him despite getting this relatively cheap deal because they knew that he was done. Running backs already don't last long in the NFL. The NFL is short for not for long. Look what happened to Ezekiel Elliott. He's out the league now. He hasn't been the same since he got banked up with those injuries. Running back is just one of those positions where once you suffer injuries like the ones Nick Chubb have, especially lower body ones, you just can never be anywhere close to the same running back that you were before you got those injuries. I really don't get this signing by the Houston Texans. Woody Marks just offers you so much compared to what you're getting out of Nick Chubb at this stage of his career. And I just hate how signing Nick Chubb is just going to move Woody Marks further down the depth chart because now the Texans are wasting what could have been a really crucial part of their offense this year. Nick Chubb, Joe Mixon, they don't have the ability to run routes out of the backfield like Woody Marks does. They don't have the hands that Woody Marks does coming out of the backfield. Woody Marks was Mississippi State's all-time career receptions leader. Do you know how rare it is for a running back to lead any program all-time in receptions? To play at Mississippi State for Mike Leach at the time, who ran an air raid offense, you pretty much are a running back disguised as a receiver. He just offers such a different skill set that the Texans don't have in Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb. They would have just been better suited saving a little bit of this money that they spent on Nick Chubb and just investing more into giving Woody Marks more playing time this year because he's just the more explosive and more dynamic back. And yeah, we haven't seen Woody Marks play. So why I'm assuming this? Because just look at Nick Chubb's last couple of injuries. Look how he played last year for the Browns. He is not the same back. Browns fans are going to stop sobbing over Nick Chubb when they see Quinshon Judkins snapping this season. He was one of my favorite running backs coming out of this past year's draft. He's an old school downhill sledgehammer at the running back position. He has an aggressive running style. He gets the ball. He's north and south. He's looking for contact. He is looking to run you over, and he doesn't go down off first contact. It takes at least 2 or 3 players to get Quinshon Judkins down, and he's faster than your prototypical power back. Normally, a running back that has the kind of build that Quinshon Judkins has runs 4.58, 4.6. Quinshon Judkins ran 4.48 at the NFL Combine when he ran the 40-yard dash, and he is 6 foot, 221 pounds. He had a career average of 5 yards per carry in college. At Ole Miss, he ran for 1,500 yards his freshman year. He has scored 16 and 17 touchdowns his last 3 years playing collegiate ball. This is a monster. He just has a nose for the end zone, and he very quickly will establish himself as the RB1 on the Browns this season. Yeah, they still have Jerome Ford, who's a better do-it-all back than Quinshon Judkins, but Quinshon Judkins eventually will become the Cleveland Browns workhorse running back at some point this season. He will phase out Jerome Ford because it surprised me when they drafted Quinshon Judkins that early in the draft. When you draft the running back in round 2, it pretty much is a tell that you don't really like your current running back situation. So for them to get Quinshon Judkins and then doubled it with Dylan Sampson, it shows that Jerome Ford is on the clock. And Quinshon Judkins is just a better pure runner of the ball than what Jerome Ford is. Jerome Ford doesn't break contact the way that Quinshon Judkins does. Quinshon Judkins was the best running back in college football, or one of the best, not named Ashton Genty, at just bouncing off guys. When you get a guy like a Quinshon Judkins in a short and inches situation, or you're in a situation when it's 3rd and goal, 4th and goal from the 1, you need somebody to just punch it in who's just going to smash everybody and get it in for 6. Quinshon Judkins is that guy. If you are somebody who plays fantasy football, rather it be Dynasty League or you just play one-off fantasy for the season, you need to have Quinshon Judkins written down somewhere on your notes. I don't care if it's your Apple notes, your Android notes, or you are just old school and you write things down in a notebook. You need to write down the name Quinshon Judkins. You need to draft him in all of your fantasy leagues because he's going to be one of the best rookie running backs in the NFL this season. Last year, Jerome Ford was somewhat held back because of the injuries that the Browns sustained on their offensive line. But with all of their first string offensive line being healthy this year, you should see the production on the ground improve. Plus, you got more capable quarterback play this year than what you had last year when you're going back and forth between Jameis Winston and DTR. With Quinshon Judkins, you're just going to have a more power-oriented rushing attack, which is essentially what Kevin Stefanski wants out of his backs when you have a guy who comes from a play-action, pass-heavy offense and likes to run that kind of scheme. Having Quinshon Judkins opens a lot of things up for this Browns offense. I feel Cleveland Browns fans should be really excited about what they're going to be getting in Quinshon Judkins this year. He should immediately become a fan favorite. He spends a lot of time around Shedeur Sanders. Anytime the Cleveland Browns make a social media post, you see a lot of fans in the comment section saying we need more 12 and we need more Quinshon Judkins for a very good reason. Browns fans won't be remembering Nick Chubb signing with the Houston Texans for that long when the season kicks off when they see how good Quinshon Judkins will be. The Cincinnati Bengals are the NFL's most overhyped team entering this season. This is a bona fide 7-on-7 squad. Yeah, you got one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in Joe Burrow. Yeah, you got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, the best wide receiver duo in the league. But outside of that, you suck at everything else. You got a bad offensive line. You can't run the football. Your defense got worse. You lost Trey Hendrickson, who was your best player last year. He led the NFL in sacks. You're too cheap to pay him. Then you don't even want to pay the guy who you used the first-round pick on to replace him. You just cut Jermaine Pratt, who was your team's leading tackler last year. And then you expect your new defensive coordinator, Al Golden, to fix this defense, losing the two best players on it? That's unrealistic. Cam Taylor-Britt is your best corner. He was one of the worst cornerbacks in the NFL last season. And yeah, you had a few other injuries in the secondary, but when you lose a guy that had the kind of production that Trey Hendrickson has had over the last couple of years, he's a borderline Hall of Famer. You need to pay that man, because if not, your defense is going to be just as bad, or if not possibly worse, this year than what it was in 2024. And you cannot expect to win games asking Joe Burrow in this offense to play flawless football. For Joe Burrow to lead the Bengals to the playoffs again this year, he pretty much has to throw 50 touchdowns and maybe only 2 or 3 interceptions this year, which he definitely has the ability to do. But when your quarterback has to be Mr. Perfect to win, that's just not a sustainable way of being able to have success in the NFL. You lost to the Steelers last year, who had a worse quarterback situation than what you did. You've missed the playoffs 2 straight seasons when the Steelers have made it, despite having quarterback play that has been way worse than yours. You've had top 3 quarterback play out of Joe Burrow in 2024, and yet the Steelers still finished with a better record than you. And this season, what area have you improved in? Nowhere. Your offensive line is just as bad as what it's been since you drafted Joe Burrow. Yeah, you re-signed Higgins and Chase. You kept the band together. Cool, but you have a 3-man team. This is not the NBA where you have 5 players on the field at once. You have 11 players on the field. Having 3 guys taking up 44% of your cap space is not a sustainable recipe for not just being a consistent Super Bowl contender, but just being a playoff team. And there have been plenty of elite quarterbacks that have missed the playoffs due to this same exact situation because they didn't have a good defense. They didn't have a good offensive line. They didn't have the ability to run the football. There's a reason why you struggle to close out games late in the fourth quarter because you couldn't run time off the clock because you didn't have the ability to. You were third in the NFL in rushing yards per game. And I love Chase Brown. I think he's a really good back, but behind this offensive line that he has blocking for him up front, he's not going to have that much success. This is a air raid team, and you can't win playing air raid football in the NFL. This isn't college. If Joe Burrow has to be Mr. Perfect this year, it perfectly shows how the Bengals are not going to go that far this season. I do not see this being a playoff team this year, and I'm not hating. I have nothing against the Cincinnati Bengals, but this is a franchise that, for one, they don't draft as well as what the Ravens and the Steelers do, and two, there are concerns about Zach Taylor. When you consistently lose games the way that the Bengals did last year, it's an indictment on the coaching. Evan McPherson, you gave him an extension before you gave T. Higgins and Jamar Chase one. And he sold you in several games. When you lose a bunch of one-possession football games, it's not just you being unlucky. Teams that consistently find ways to lose those kinds of games are poorly coached. And the teams that find ways to win those games like Kansas City did are well coached. So the Bengals this year, at best, you go 9-8. But I have you going anywhere between 7-10 and 8-9 at best because you are no better this season than what you were in 2024. What has gotten better about the Bengals? Nothing. If anything, you got worse. Trey Hendrickson might not play. You don't want to pay Shamar Stewart. You want to lowball him. This is not a playoff team. And yet, Vegas has them with the 8th best odds to win it all. They're not going to go close to doing that. They're not even going to finish above the Steelers in the division this year. The Steelers are going to be better than you because outside of quarterback and wide receiver, the Steelers are better than you everywhere else. They have a better offensive line, a better defense by a landslide. The Bengals are going to disappoint for the 3rd straight season in a row. Yeah, when Joe Burrow got injured in 2023, he had that wrist injury. Cool, that was a fair excuse to use for Zach Taylor. But Mike Tomlin went to the playoffs that same exact season with Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, and Mitchell Trubisky at quarterback. So if he can win with whoever, and yet Zach Taylor is underachieving with Joe Burrow, what makes you think, if you're a Bengals fan, that things are going to change this year when you got worse on the biggest weakness of your team last season? Jalen Ramsey is on the trade block. To me, he still is a top 15, top 18 corner. He's no longer an elite corner, but there's a handful of teams that could use his services, and we're going to take a few minutes to break down some possible landing spots that we could see the Dolphins trade Jalen Ramsey to. Starting off with the Baltimore Ravens, they currently are in the market for Jaire Alexander, and if they don't come away with him, then Jalen Ramsey probably will be their next best option. Yes, he does have a pretty hefty price tag, but the Dolphins more than likely will have to eat a little bit of that contract for anybody to want to trade for him, unless they want to take a dead cap hit and release him, which is going to be really huge. They can't afford to do that. The Ravens already have Nate Wiggins, who had a really outstanding rookie season. Marlon Humphrey had an all-pro year, playing majorly in the slot. And then, who's your second corner on the boundary? Is it going to be Chidobe Awuzie? You probably want Jalen Ramsey. And the Ravens, being a team that right now is in win-now mode, they're trying to go all in on winning the Super Bowl. You want to maximize Lamar Jackson's prime. Getting Jalen Ramsey, it's the kind of move that you make when you're just desperate to get over the hump. The Green Bay Packers, with them cutting Jaire Alexander, they have a major hole at the cornerback position, and Jalen Ramsey immediately will be their number one corner. And although he's not top 5 or top 10 anymore, you still getting top 15, top 18 level quarterback play from Jalen Ramsey is good enough to somewhat fill the hole that Jaire gives you getting rid of him. And yeah, the Packers have gone a lot of games without Jaire, but the cornerbacks they had last year played really well. But Jalen Ramsey still is good enough to be an upgrade over those guys that you currently have in your cornerback room. The Minnesota Vikings are a really interesting team because right now their cornerback situation isn't really that good. They got Jaire Rodgers, the dude who missed all of last season for gambling. And then you have Mekhi Blackman, who showed a lot of promise at USC, but he still hasn't really proven that much at this level. So you get Jalen Ramsey. He'll be like a 1-year stopgap for you until you can load up on corner in the draft next year. Jalen would be a perfect fit in Brian Flores' scheme. He still is a really good physical press man-to-man corner. Brian Flores likes to blitz a lot. He likes his corners to get up in your face. And Jalen Ramsey will be a perfect fit for that style of defense that the Vikings like to run. The Las Vegas Raiders, you talk about a team that really needs some cornerback help right now. The Raiders, man, they need Jalen Ramsey. And Jalen Ramsey, when he wanted out of Jacksonville a few years ago, he wanted to be a Raider. But unfortunately, they didn't make it happen. Now he's available. And Pete Carroll, he likes guys to have the kind of personality that Jalen Ramsey has. So Jalen will mesh well with him. And then right now you got Jacorian Bennett and Eric Stokes, who wasn't that good last year on what was a top 10 defense that the Packers had. So you get Jalen Ramsey. The Raiders cornerback room looks a lot better than what it does right now. The Atlanta Falcons are a team that should be in the mix for Jalen Ramsey that people aren't talking about enough. Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot, they got to produce some results this year. And not only are they expected to win this division possibly, but they also are expected to be a playoff team. And anything less than one of those two things happening is going to result in both of those guys getting the boot. Getting Jalen Ramsey is the kind of move that you make when you are in the kind of situation the Falcons are in. They drafted well. They just got a few holes, and their second cornerback spot alongside of A.J. Terrell is one of them. You make this trade for Jalen Ramsey, and you immediately have one of the better cornerback tandems in the league because Mike Hughes, we've seen enough of him to know that he ain't it. He's like a good backup cornerback if one of your two starters goes down. But if you plan on having Mike Hughes starting alongside of A.J. Terrell for the entirety of this season, then whichever side he's going to be playing on is barbecue chicken for the opposing quarterbacks that's throwing to him because he just isn't it. And then also, Raheem Morris is already familiar with Jalen Ramsey when he was the Rams defensive coordinator for those years when Jalen Ramsey was there. He liked him a lot. He got along with them pretty well. So you reunite Jalen Ramsey and Raheem Morris. The chemistry is already there. Jalen already has a good understanding of the defense that he wants to run. So you wouldn't have to spend too much time getting caught up to what the Falcons want to run. And then lastly, I got the Carolina Panthers. Like the Las Vegas Raiders, they desperately need some bodies in the secondary. They do have J.C. Horn, but other than him, it's just a bunch of family dollar workers. Getting Jalen Ramsey would somewhat solidify the Panthers' cornerback position. They still need some safety help, but if you got two really good corners and J.C. and Jalen Ramsey, then that'll help out those safeties. Overall, the Panthers, them getting Jalen probably wouldn't make as much sense as some of these other teams trying to get him because the Panthers, yeah, ideally they want to compete this year, but they still are a year away from doing so. But if you get Jalen Ramsey, he does make you a lot better than what you currently are right now. And you're banking on a lot of rookies stepping up for you, getting after the quarterback. Getting Jalen could take a little bit of pressure off of those guys because instead of you relying on your front four to get consistent pressure, you can get a bunch of coverage sacks with J.C. Horn. When he's healthy, he's a top 10 corner, and Jalen Ramsey still gives you productive enough cornerback play to where this could be a really scary duo So these are the 6 teams that I feel will be the best landing spots for the Miami Dolphins to trade Jalen Ramsey to. Leave your possible trade destinations for Jalen Ramsey in the comment section below. And I'll see you guys shortly with another episode.